never was. This hour is tender. It holds the weight of everything you've carried. But it also holds a truth your pain can't erase. You made it this far. And that matters. Your presence here now matters. You've walked through gaslight and silence, through self-doubt and apology, and still you're standing. And soon light will break. The darkness never gets the final word. So breathe. You've done enough explaining, enough surviving. Let this be your pause, your permission to stop running. And if you need someone to walk with you from here, someone to meet you with grace and wisdom, stay with us. Because next hour, Brother Noel will be here. And trust me, his words hold the kind of forgiveness that sets captives free. You're not alone. And this healing, it's just beginning. Let's get one thing clear, baby. You weren't crazy. You were being conditioned to doubt your own clarity. They fed you confusion like it was care, spun their forgetfulness into grace, laughed off your intuition like it was fiction. But hear me, you were not the problem. You were the threat. A woman who sees too clearly, scares the ones who survive by smoke and mirrors. You didn't misremember. You didn't overreact. You noticed what they hoped you'd ignore. And when you spoke up, they didn't refute you. They dismantled your sense of reality, piece by piece, until you stopped trusting your own breath. But I'm here to help you find that breath again, to name the games you were never meant to play, to shine light where they preferred shadows. Because surviving gaslighting isn't about proving your truth. It's about learning to feel safe in it again. They told you you were dramatic, too emotional, too sensitive. But let me reframe that. What they called drama was a cry for safety. Your nervous system knew. It read the room before your mouth did. It spotted the lies, even when you couldn't name them yet. You weren't overreacting. You were reacting to something real, something they worked overtime to deny. They minimized. You internalized, but not anymore. We're not here to shrink ourselves tonight. We're here to expand into truth. Your sensitivity is sacred. It is not a flaw. It's a compass. One, they tried to snap in half, but we're putting the pieces back together. Glued with grace. Held with wisdom. You are not too much. You were placed in too small a cage. Let's stretch those wings, baby. You're remembering how to fly. Let's talk about the silent script they were reading from. The manipulator's manual. It doesn't come in a book, but you felt every chapter. Chapter 1? love bomb you until you question your worth without them. Gifts, compliments, grand gestures. Not out of love, but leverage. Chapter 2. Shift the blame. Always. They forgot? You're too demanding. They lied? You're too insecure. And Chapter 3. Convince you that chaos is normal. Make you think anxiety is just love's intensity. No, baby, that wasn't love. That was control wearing perfume. You were not overreacting. You were overexposed to someone who benefited from your silence. We're rewriting the manual tonight. With truth, with boundaries, with a steady hand. Do you remember what happened the first time you said no? Not the polite kind, but the firm kind. The I'm not shrinking for you anymore kind. They didn't just push back. They unraveled. Why? Because your no disrupted their entire ecosystem. You weren't supposed to resist. You were supposed to stay grateful for crumbs. But you demanded bread. And that was your awakening. Scary, costly, sacred. Saying no wasn't the end of you. It was the beginning. So tonight we honor that voice, that sacred boundary, that divine resistance. Your no is holy. Your no is healing. Let it echo. Let it settle. You're not difficult. You're discerning. Let's name this for what it was. You weren't safe. You were silent. There's a difference. Safety means your truth is honored. Silence means your truth is punished. You smiled through discomfort, laughed to diffuse tension, changed the subject to keep the peace. But inside, you were screaming. And they called you peaceful. They said, "You're so easy to be around." No, baby, you were surviving. Don't confuse stillness with peace. You were still like a bomb waiting not to go off. But that stillness cost you. It chipped away at your joy, at your you. Tonight, we're done performing safety. We're building real safety. The kind where your voice doesn't cause earthquakes. Where your no doesn't end relationships. Where your body doesn't brace for reaction. That's the home we're building in you now. Peace that doesn't require silence. Love that doesn't come with a muzzle. You ever find yourself trying to explain pain? Like you owe someone a thesis paper just to cry? That's conditioning, not clarity. You don't need a slideshow of evidence to feel what you feel. Pain is not a debate. It's a signal. But they trained you to second-guess your body. To present receipts for every ache. To justify your sadness with a chart. No more. Your pain is valid because you felt it. Period. Tonight, you don't need to prove you were hurt. You just need to acknowledge that you were. Let the tears come without a dissertation. Some pain doesn't have a headline. It just lives in the body. But that body remembers. And that memory matters. So let's let it speak. Not for sympathy, but for truth. Truth that sets your nervous system free. Bit by bit. Word by word. Let's clear something up. They didn't win. You adapted. That version of you that stayed quiet, that was a survival strategy. Not weakness, not failure. You adjusted your volume to stay in the room. You minimized your shine to avoid their jealousy. You played small so they wouldn't feel threatened. That wasn't defeat, it was calculation. You were playing chess in a minefield. So don't shame your younger self for surviving. She did what she had to do. He did what he thought was safest. They navigated impossible dynamics with grace you didn't even recognize. But now you have different tools. Now you have language. Now you have the right to take up space. And when you do, you're not betraying your past self. You're liberating them. You ever notice how the guilt doesn't match the crime? You say no and suddenly feel like you murdered someone's joy. You set a boundary and carry shame like you cursed a village. That's not intuition. That's indoctrination. They trained you to feel guilt every time you honored yourself. Not because it was wrong, but because it disrupted their control. You were never selfish. You were strategic. And their discomfort? That was never yours to solve. Tonight, we put the guilt down. Not because you've convinced everyone else, but because you finally believe yourself. You're allowed to exist without constant explanation. You're allowed to say no without the follow-up essay. You're allowed to prioritize your peace. That doesn't make you cruel. It makes you free. And baby, freedom should never come with a guilt tax. Let me say this clearly. You don't need their permission to heal. Not their apology. Not their acknowledgement. Not their changed behavior. Healing is not a group project. You don't need their signature on your piece. Some of the people who hurt you will never own it. They'll rewrite the story. They'll deny your experience. They'll call your growth an attack. But listen. You don't need their validation to move forward. You don't need them to see your pain for it to be real. You don't need them to say sorry for you to say goodbye. Tonight, I want you to close the loop. Not because they came around, but because you are done circling. You're allowed to walk away mid-sentence. You're allowed to end chapters without closure. You're allowed to release people who still don't get it. That's not bitterness. That's boundaries. And boundaries are a love letter to your nervous system. Let's talk about gaslighting's final form, minimization. They don't outright deny it anymore. They just call it not that deep. They say, you're too sensitive. Or, it was just a joke. Or the classic, let it go already. Here's the truth. What hurt you counts. What scared you matters. What stayed in your body is valid. You don't owe them a smaller version of your story to make them comfortable. Tonight, we reclaim the narrative. Not out of revenge, but out of reality. You're not exaggerating. You're not overthinking. You're remembering. And remembering is part of reclaiming power. So when they say it wasn't real, you don't argue. You don't explain. You simply believe yourself louder. Let's talk about anger. Not the explosion kind. The sacred kind. The kind that rises when your boundaries are crossed. The kind that flares when your truth is silenced. The kind that says, no more. You've been told anger is dangerous, unbecoming, unattractive. But let's be honest, that narrative protects abusers, not survivors. Your anger is not the enemy. It's the smoke that signals the fire of your worth. You're not angry because you're broken. You're angry because you remember. Because your body knows what you were never allowed to say out loud. Let it speak. Without apology. Without translation. Tonight, give your anger a seat at the table. Not to destroy, but to bear witness. Let it hold space with your sadness. Let it stand beside your compassion. Let it be a part of your healing choir. Anger is not always a problem to solve. Sometimes it's the proof that you're waking up. You still hear their words, don't you? The names they called you. The labels they stitched into your skin. Too much. Too emotional. Too needy. Hard to love. They said those things not because they were true, but because your truth threatened their comfort. You are not what they called you. You are what you survived. You are what you learned. You are what you reclaimed. Let's rewrite it. You are sensitive because you feel deeply. You are emotional because you care passionately. You are complex because you've endured and adapted. None of that makes you a burden. It makes you brilliant. So the next time their voice echoes in your mind, whisper back your own. Say, that's not mine anymore. And let it go. Let's name one of the oldest gaslighting tactics in the book. You're overreacting. It's a phrase designed to shrink you, to rewrite your reality. to make you doubt the very instincts trying to protect you. But here's the truth. If it made you feel small, if it pierced your heart, if it stirred something deep inside, it mattered. You weren't overreacting. You were responding to dismissal, to manipulation, to disrespect. Even if your voice cracked, even if your hands shook, that was your nervous system sounding the alarm. You don't owe anyone a perfectly polished reaction to injustice. You don't have to be calm to be valid. You just have to be honest. And that is enough. You kept quiet to keep the peace. Swallowed your truth so others wouldn't feel uncomfortable. Bit your tongue to avoid being difficult. But silence has a cost. A spiritual tax. It builds in your bones like unpaid debt. Until one day, your body starts saying what your mouth couldn't. Headaches. Tight chest. Sleepless nights. The pain of suppression echoes somewhere. Here's your permission. Speak. Even if your voice shakes. Even if you cry halfway through. Let it out. Your truth was never meant to be buried alive. Each word is a release. Each confession a reclamation. Each honest moment a rebellion against your silence. You don't need to be loud to be heard. You just need to stop abandoning your own voice. You didn't imagine it. What happened hurt. And you deserved someone to say, that was wrong. But too often, you were met with silence. Or worse, with blame. So, you questioned yourself. Minimized your own memory. Gaslit yourself into believing you made it bigger than it was. But here's what healing teaches. Pain that is witnessed becomes lighter. Not gone, but bearable. Seen. Held. Your story deserves more than your own echo. It deserves reverence. It deserves, I believe you. You don't need to justify why it broke your heart. You just need someone to sit with the pieces. Tonight, let me be that someone. Let me hold space for your unspoken grief. I won't fix it, but I will not look away. They told you your standards were too high, that your boundaries made you cold, that your needs were unreasonable. But let's get something clear. You are not asking for too much. You are asking the wrong people. You're not too needy. You're finally aware of your needs. You're not dramatic. You're just done pretending you're fine. You want honesty, respect, consistency. That's not a tall order. That's the bare minimum. The people who make you feel like your needs are a burden, they benefit from your silence. So let's be loud. Let's be clear. You are allowed to have needs, to expect reciprocity, to say, this isn't enough for me, because you are enough, and you deserve enough in return. You don't need bruises to prove you were harmed. Not all pain is visible. Some of it lives in the way you flinch at kindness, in the way you double-check every message before sending it, in the way your breath catches when someone raises their voice. Trauma doesn't always leave evidence, but it leaves echoes in your nervous system, in your memory, in your need for peace that doesn't cost your sanity. You don't owe the world a slideshow of your suffering. You don't have to convince anyone of what you survived. Your experience is valid even if it wasn't loud, even if no one believed you, even if you're still piecing together what really happened. What you feel is enough. You don't need a permission slip to grieve, to heal, to say, that hurt me, and walk away. Healing starts when we stop asking for permission to feel. They made you think it was you, your sensitivity, your standards, your desire for clarity. But the truth? You were reacting to mistreatment, to gaslighting, to emotional bait and switch. You kept trying to adjust your tone, your boundaries, your expectations, hoping it would create peace. But peace shouldn't come at the cost of your self-respect. And love shouldn't require you to shrink. They didn't want peace. They wanted compliance. And when you stopped giving it, they called you difficult. But you were never the problem. You were the one brave enough to name the dysfunction, to refuse the silence, to call a pattern a pattern. That's not weakness. That's strength. That's healing. You don't have to explain your healing. Not to the ones who hurt you. Not to the ones who watched and did nothing. Not to the ones who still don't get it. You are allowed to grow in silence. To walk away without a final monologue. To stop offering footnotes for your boundaries. If someone won't honor your pain, they don't deserve front-row seats to your healing. You've spent enough time decoding yourself for people unwilling to understand. Enough time writing essays to justify your worth. Enough time translating your needs into a language they still refused to learn. No more. Healing is not a debate. It is not up for votes. You get to move forward, even if they don't clap, even if they never say sorry, even if they rewrite the story.